Right, breaking news from Syria now. The Syrian army saying it is to resume military operations against rebels in Idlib province in the northwest of the country. Zeina Khodr is our correspondent. She's in Suruc on the Turkey-Syria border. Zeina, it wasn't that long ago, 2 days ago, when there was a tentative ceasefire, if you like. What's brought this on?
Well, like you mentioned, on Friday night, a conditional ceasefire was announced and agreed by the warring sides approximately 3 days ago. And in fact, it has been quiet. Yes, the warring sides were shelling each other on the front lines, but the Syrian army or the military never released a statement mentioning these attacks. In fact, it is quite strange that in their statement today announcing the resumption of military operations in Idlib, they are saying or accusing what they are calling armed terrorist groups in Idlib of attacking civilian areas. So like I mentioned, since Friday night, the Syrian army has made no mention of any attack targeting civilian areas. So now it is saying it is no longer going to comply with this ceasefire. It is also blaming the opposition for refusing to comply with the Sochi agreement. That agreement was reached between Russia and Turkey in September last year. It calls for the creation of a demilitarized zone around the rebel-controlled province of Idlib, which means the rebels would need to retreat 20 kilometers from the front lines. Now, the mainstream Syrian opposition said they would be ready to do this, but only after getting written guarantees from the Russian military. Yesterday, the main group in Idlib, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which many in the international community consider a terrorist organization, says no, we are not ready to do that. We are not going to pull back from the front lines. We are not going to, in the words of Mohammed al-Jolani, the head of the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, in his words, we're not going to give the Syrian government what they couldn't take militarily. So right now, a statement just released a short while ago, the Syrian military saying that they're going to resume their military operations. We have to remember those operations started in late April, intense bombardment targeting towns and villages across southern Idlib and northern Hama, killing, according to war monitors, more than 800 civilians, 200 of them children. So that ceasefire that was announced on Friday night no longer exists.
And so therefore we can expect a resumption of the Syrian government backed by the Russian air campaign, targeting what we understand to be a huge amount of civilian infrastructure like clinics, hospitals, schools and the like.
Yes, Martine, that is what we saw over the past few weeks. Yes, there were clashes along the front lines, but the Syrian government and its allies failed to take ground. They took a number of villages, but they really didn't make any significant gains on the ground. What they were doing was targeting civilian areas in order to pressure the opposition to surrender. It is quite strange that we're receiving this statement now, even though we all knew when the ceasefire was announced Friday night that it was ambiguous and that Russia and Turkey, the external players who support the local actors in Idlib, didn't iron out the details of that ceasefire. There was no time limit, except for the fact that the Syrian army conditioned it to the implementation of Sochi, but there was no timetable attached to that condition. So we can only assume, at this point, that something went wrong in behind-the-scenes negotiations, either between the two main players, Russia and Turkey, because at the end of the day, we keep talking about the government, we keep talking about the opposition, but it's these two countries, really, who will decide the fate of Idlib. So maybe they couldn't reach some sort of an agreement, particularly on creating this demilitarized zone.
Right, OK. Zeina Khodr for now. Thank you very much indeed. Zeina Khodr with breaking news affecting Idlib in northwestern Syria.